Okay, so this video is me trying to explain how I find my Aimlab sensitivity with a controller and how to answer a lot of people's questions who are trying to play Aimlabs with a controller. First is a lot of people always ask, how do I get my in-game sensitivity to match exactly perfectly with my Aimlab sensitivity? And me personally, I don't think you can. It's pretty much impossible. You could get it kind of close, but I don't play it like that. Second is a lot of people always say I have a lot of inconsistency with my sensitivity whenever I'm playing Aim Labs. Sometimes it feels like it's going fast, and sometimes it feels like it's going super slow. So the biggest thing I always tell people is if you watch this video I made, let me find it. I have it queued up. This video explains that your FPS is directly tied to your sensitivity in Aim Labs on a controller, at least. So whenever I spun around in this video, it took me 13 seconds at 60 frames. Now, it took 6 seconds at 120 FPS. These numbers aren't exactly, but if I had a high-speed camera, it would cut it in half, right? So I'm doubling my FPS and I'm cutting the time in half. So my sensitivity would be cut in half. And then if I cranked it all the way up to 300 FPS, that's this number right here divided by 5 would be very close to this number. So my sensitivity would change it would go 5 times more if I'm going from 300 FPS to 60 FPS. So if you're having frame drops, your FPS is changing and then your sensitivity is changing. So always try to have a monitor on to show how much FPS you're getting, and then your sensitivity will stay the same if your FPS is staying the same. The next thing is if you are playing on a controller and then you accidentally bump your desk or something happens and your mouse registers the input, then Aimlabs will always go with the mouse over the controller. So if your mouse is getting picked up while you're trying to do a task with your controller, it's going to mess up your sensitivity like crazy. All right, so if you're trying to get to settings, this is where the settings are. We're going to start with the targets. So for me, I picked these two colors because they're complete opposites. And you see this is my crosshair, if I change these two, it's going to be opposite colors. So my crosshair and my targets are always opposite of each other. If I'm playing a tracking task and I put my crosshair on the target, it's going to turn this color. So if I'm playing a tracking task, I'm going to make my crosshair, pink. And if I'm playing a flicking task, then I'm going to make it teal. So it's opposite of each other. For audio, the hit noise on, this is my hit noise, you could change it. But I don't have the kill noise on just because I personally like to just flick after I've seen that the target's dead instead of just hearing it, because the game I play, you don't hear it. Okay, this is where I set my FPS. I have it on low latency because I feel like that's the best, most responsive for me. I limit it to 170. My computer can do more than 170, but my monitor is caps at 170. So I want to keep it on there so I don't have frame drops. And I have it set for the fastest. That feels like the best response time. And the only one of these I have on is this damage indicator. So if I'm doing like a tracking, the target will have like a little bar, a health bar on the top of him. And I like to see that so I know whenever he's going to be dead so I can hurt and flick. The visuals, this is how I have it set up, and I have it set up like this on purpose so I could have these smaller kind of grids back here for tracking. When I'm seeing the target move side to side, it's easier to know when they're switching whenever I see the grid pattern on the back. And these are my settings to make that grid pattern. controls, I'll skip for a second. So my in game, this game one, I have it on first person. I always hide the weapon because you might have a target hidden behind the gun. Um, I don't have the recoil on because just like the sensitivity, the recoil is not the same as your game, so it's pointless to me to have it on. The key bindings, the only thing I change is I come down to the bottom and I change my restart to this M on my keyboard. So if I'm messing up on the task, I just have to press M instead of actually going press start and going to reset. I don't have any skins. All right, so the actual settings. So for me, when I'm playing a task, I always change the setting. The sensitivity is going to change from task to task, but what doesn't change for me from task to task is my FOV. I keep the same, and I keep this vertical sensitivity thing because on PUBG I play at 0.7, so it's going to take um, 0.7 is up and down compared to my side to side. So if you don't change that in your game, just keep that one. Now, in my dead zone is at the lowest you can go. I play on linear. I never play with the aim assist on because especially for flicking ones, all the aim assist does is kind of slow you down over the target, and it's not even that good. So it slows me down too much whenever I'm doing a flicking task. So I always just leave it off. Um, Raw inputs, I think that's default, and these sensitivities down here, that's kind of for like mouse and keyboard. So for the main sensitivity, I have 3 starting points that I start. So if I'm playing a task that involves small flicks, and I'll give some examples. These is like small flicks to me, or like a sniper task. Then I'll start at 45 at 170 FPS, and I'll usually kind of go up from there. 45 is usually my base one. I usually don't go lower than 45. For bigger flicks, like this is a task I consider like a bigger flicking task. I'll start at 55 at 100 FPS. I'm sorry, 170 FPS. And this is a bigger flicking task that's followed by tracking. Start those at 55 at 170 FPS. Keep saying 170 because that's just as important as your sensitivity. And for tracking only tasks, kind of like this task right here, I'm starting at 58. So that's what I start at. So 45 for small flicks, 55 for bigger flicks, and 58 for tracking. Okay, so when you finish playing a task, if you come up here to the rankings, it'll kind of be discouraging because some of these people's scores are just so insanely high that you'll feel like you did really terrible. But for me, I try to get anything over 70% better than everybody who's been playing this because everybody's playing on mouse and keyboard. So realistically, 70% is pretty high. So for this week, I'm at 89 percentile with this score that I just made. If I come down here, it shows the all time. This was the best score I've ever made right here on this task. And I'm in the 92nd percentile. So even though these people look like their score is so much insanely better than my score, actually my score is in the 92nd percentile. So it's not so bad. So I always aim for at least 70% better than everybody who's been playing. So I'm trying to get into this number to be 70 or higher.